Cloud. Hello, everybody. Welcome to platformOS Town Hall number 68, verified by our panel of judges, and that it is Town Hall number 68. We have a very exciting Town Hall this time around because we have Colin Frost. Colin Frost, you might know from such companies as Business Catalyst, circa 2004. Who's now, of course, full-time with the platformOS team, has been for a number of years now, very focused on channel partner development, sales, biz dev, non-technical stuff. However, today, he is going to be presenting our DNS and SSL management. And what's exciting about that is that it is much easier, and I think we can have Martin maybe put his hand up and contest to that fact, having used it today. Yeah, awesome. And the reason why it's taken a little bit longer to deploy this solution for scale is that the architecture of platformOS isn't just a traditional, here's a web server, here's a proxy, throw lots of SSL certificates at it, and you're good to go. We use load balancing layers. We have built an enterprise infrastructure. And so when we're deploying an SSL certificate, it needs to go on multiple load balancers so that it handles all the loading, and that there's an SSL certificate that's relevant for your client's domains on all relevant servers. So that's why it's a little more tricky behind the scenes, but Derek in our DevOps engineering team has crushed it, and it will continue to be improved. And we're very excited to hand it over to Colin Frost, sales guy extraordinaire, who is going to actually demonstrate this extremely technical thing made easy. Over to you, Colin.
Great, thank you, Adam. Yeah, so thanks for throwing me under the bus, Adam. I think Adam approached me and said, "Why don't you present DNS?" And the fear of God, coursed through my veins. But no, look, it's all good. I had a run through, and so I'm excited to show this to you today. And while the odd delays in terms of they all refreshing as such, hopefully we'll get through this without having to wait too long with that. So in this demo, we're going to add a domain, custom domain to platformOS instance. We're going to create a DNS hosted record or hosted zone, and we're going to add a few DNS records to that hosted zone, and then create and apply an SSL certificate. So let's actually jump into the interface. And here I have a instance that was created earlier called clever_DNS. And of course, it's fairly obvious we would go to the domain button here to start this process. And obviously, these are the system domains that are automatically generated when you create the instance on platformOS. And on the right here, we would click Add New Domain. Here's where you decide whether you're adding the DNS to the platformOS, you're creating a DNS zone on platformOS, or you're actually going to use DNS management external to platformOS. In this presentation, we're just going to focus on the DNS zone being on platformOS. So we're going to bring across the domain, which is going to be clevernetsolutions.com.au. And you check this box if you want to use this, set this as a default. And we will go ahead and create that zone. All right, and what happened there?
It says at the top, we are processing your request.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. So maybe some messaging could be added here, I think, Adam, just some feedback.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, that message there is there, but as you rightly found, it wasn't necessarily in your face.
Yeah.
And, it's already been added. But maybe what we will do is just add the domain in there, and then where it says domains, it'll say processing.
Well, it's actually processing, so it hasn't.
Oh, there we go. Oh, it has.
Yeah, it hasn't actually come through yet.
Maybe I should read this.
But yeah, so now this process could take anything from minutes to 10 minutes. So hopefully this happens fairly quickly. What I'm going to do is just flick back to the slideshow and just maybe while we wait for that, just go through what we've done here again. So we've added a new domain to the instance. We've selected the hosted DNS hosted zone as to be on platformOS, and of course gone ahead and added that. and now it is refreshing. So what will happen now, after it's finished processing, it'll come up with a reparking underscore domain in the status area. And that means we are ready to rock and roll. So then we'll click through. So let's just see what's happening here at this. This is all real time. So bear with us. I'm just going to refresh
the
on
page.
This.
Yeah, refresh the page. And while that's happening, I'm just going to reiterate what's going on in the background here again. So in a traditional DNS environment, you can register DNS, set up your records pretty quickly. But what we're doing seamlessly is applying a SSL certificate for that domain. So we're provisioning an SSL certificate in the background. And then what we're also doing is linking the domain to the instance, along with deploying the SSL certificate to all the load balancers in that stack that this instance relates to. And the reason for that is if one of the load balancers is overloaded, etc. There you go. You can see it's reparking is ready to go already. So that's processed everything. It's deployed the certificates on the load balancers. Colin's now pressing on view, and back to you, Col.
All right, yeah, so at this point, obviously platformOS returns the name servers that we need to use. Now at this point, we need to go to our registrar for our domain, which I have set up here. I use Crazy Domains. And in here, we need to come in and modify the name servers, all right? So you'll see currently, this might be familiar. It's a Business Catalyst name server. So we'll need to modify this and copy and paste from the partner portal here, each of these. So let's do this progressively, and we'll modify this first one and update. And we'll do the second one.
So you could even cut and paste into all those fields and update all at once.
If you want to go, all right, yeah, I'll do that just to speed it up.
Just in case they're doing a batch processing job in the background, and when you hit update, it's queuing it up. So let's queue up those in one hit.
That's a good point. As you can see, I haven't done this often in my...
You're rocking it, mate. So
I better update these.
Add another one. So click on add over on the left.
Yeah, got that. Yep. And I think this should automatically generate something. I should be safe to go, huh?
Just hit update 4.
Yeah.
All right, it does want the IP address. So just, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's a good point.
It did bring it across in my last run it through, so that's odd. Let me just try that again. Seems to be the right one there. Sorry. No, I have got the right one there.
All right, we'll just delete that last one. And then update 3. Very cool. All right, so those who are wondering what the dickens is a name server. So the name server is the top level delegated authority that is responsible for the DNS records. And so they're scattered all over the web. AWS has a bunch of name servers. You could have your own name servers if you wanted to run your own DNS server. GoDaddy has their own name servers. Cheap Domains, Melbourne IT, if you're in Australia, they have name servers. Of course, DNS Made Easy, a really cool third-party DNS server, they have their own name servers. So what we're doing here is we're updating the registrar of that domain to say, well, we're going to use these name servers, they're the authority, and then when anybody is looking for a DNS record related to a domain that is linking to those name servers, it'll know where to go to look. So now,
so we're just refreshing here. So yeah, I mean, again, this could take anything up to even 10 minutes, I suppose, Adam. So we'll have to do some great Q&A.
It can take up to 2 hours, and in some cases, domain names, depending on how long the time to live or time to live is set. I don't know if it's time to TTL, right? You know, TTLs you see there for whenever you
time
put
to live,
time to live, time to live. It's like it can cached for a certain amount of time. If you click on diagnostics there, Cole, just for the fun of it, in that previous screen.
Let me see if I can get to it again. I think it comes up automatically after a timeout. So it's just...
Gotcha. All right, so what's happened, we've provisioned on the platformOS side. Now what's happening is we have to wait for the DNS registrar to do its thing. And so it's processing the name server change in GoDaddy. It's really quick. I've always been impressed with GoDaddy in the way they've done very fast name server changes and updates. And once that's completed, then the domain will be managed by the platformOS DNS service, because cheap domains, or whatever domain registrar that Colin has used, has been told that for this domain name, these AWS name servers are responsible. And so all around the web, all of the root servers are going to be refreshing their cache to go, what name server is responsible for this domain? AWS. AWS gets a ping. What does www.clevernetsolutions.com.au point to? Oh, it points to this load balancer. Oh, it's got an SSL certificate already on it. That's great, because you need to make sure that's happening. MX records, all of those other things are also going to now be managed on the platformOS side. And that...
Yeah, so I think we might have to, we'll revert to the slideshow just to see the screens as we go now. So obviously we've clicked update, that I've updated the name servers, and as still in process, of course. And we'll refresh that. And ultimately, though, we get to a point where they have been added. And behind the scenes, as Adam mentioned, we're verifying domain ownership, we're creating a hosted zone, and we're applying the SSL certificate to the domain as well. And once the status is ready, you can then actually click through and add your DNS records as required. That might be redirecting your MX record to your mail provider, Google Apps or otherwise, setting up your TXT or I think SPV records. This is to make sure that SPF records.
Sender policy framework.
Okay, and that the notifications from the platformOS system don't land up in spam folders for your users, and you can set up CNAME, subdomains and the like in this screen here.
You can do everything that you would do normally on a DNS provider. So whatever SRV, MX, text, A records, CNAMEs, all taken care of. So the full gamut of DNS record provision is done, is doable. And a question did come up from Mark relating to, well, hang on, what if I can't redelegate my domain to the platformOS DNS service? And there is another button, Mark, where you then use a third-party or external DNS provider. The only provision that you would want to be mindful of relating to that is that third-party DNS providers need to support aliases for A records, or A names as they're called. And most modern DNS services like DNS Made Easy fully support that. Now, what does that mean? It means that for traditionally A records, you need to insert a IP address for an A record. Well, we're using load balanced environments. The IP addresses change all the time. And so we use a fully qualified domain name for the load balancer. And as I said, most up-to-date DNS providers totally handle and allow for. Looks like those name servers haven't refreshed yet, Colin.
Yeah, it's taking some time. Yeah.
So the reason for a third-party DNS provider might be that, no, we don't want to have some other company other than the one we're using use our DNS. Well, as long as they allow for a load balancer, fully qualified domain names in an A record, or the workaround from that is simply use the CNAME, www.mydomain.com, And that can take a fully qualified domain name rather than IP address. And so what will happen is, Cole, if you want to go through these slides, and the images are actually coming through quite small on those, we will need to update those, I think.
Yeah, this is just looking at the SSL certificate that's generated automatically.
Great.
I think that's pretty much just we haven't got any other slides at this point in time, and then just be talking about the documentation that has just gone up in support of this.
Yep. So there's lots of great documentation through this. Mark, with GoDaddy, then you would simply use the CNAME and you would point to the load balancer. Cole, if you want to go into a record that has a load balancer, I'll explain it.
An instance?
Yeah, go into an instance and maybe look for JJ. What was the site that JJ used? Colin Frost. Oh, great. Yeah, so click on Colin Frost. If you want to take a look at domains, you can see the view. And
so here we've added the MX record. Here's the SPF equivalent, as I understand.
Yep.
And some subdomains there, or CNAMEs.
And now go up, because what we're actually wanting to do, and this is where I think I will need to get some updates from Colin DNS. Maybe that's where, no, not that. Anyway, Mark, we'll get that. It's in the documentation. As far as external DNS, it will tell you what the actual domain name that you would put into the CNAME of your GoDaddy account. So CNAMEs are aliases which can point to another fully qualified domain name. Traditionally, A records must point to an IP address. Yeah. 203.134.157.203. I think that was an old BC IP address. And BC had 3 of them. platformOS is built for massive scale. We're using load balancing, and we don't have IPs that you need to point to. So CNAME will point to a fully qualified domain name, and your third-party service will allow for that. www.mydomain.com points to, and we will have the load balancer IP, the load balancer address that you will simply plug into that. Cole, if you want to go to the your instance.
I'm just trying to resize my screen here for some reason.
Oh, just go up to where it says 170 up in the top, in the bar, 170%.
Oh yeah.
Click on that.
Okay,
there
cool.
We go. So just type. Yeah, there we go. You're right there.
Do you want to go back to the original?
Whichever.
Okay, I'm going to go back to this one. This has got a fuller setting. Yeah.
Great. Go to domains. And add new domain to your instance. And then click on external DNS management. So we would still put our domain name in here, Mark, for your site, because we need to know what this instance needs to be listening out for as far as the host header that will come in on the browser, mydomain.com.au or whatever it is. And then when that, we won't click that yet or at all, Cole, but when it creates it, it still provisions the domain against the instance, and then it will tell you which, and it'll also create a certificate, an SSL certificate to deploy to the load balancer. So all of that part is still happening, and then it will give you the fully qualified domain name to plug into the CNAME record on GoDaddy or whatever DNS hosting provider you use. As I said, DNS Made Easy does also support A names rather than A records, and A names will take on an alias, fully qualified domain name instead of an IP address. What is the priority for servers to host to the USA.com? Now, when you say priority, not sure what you mean there. Generally for SEO, Google doesn't care so much about that anymore. It knows that people have .coms all around the world. It's looking for IP address. So you could have USA or .net, and that could be hosted wherever. You could host a .com out of Australia or Canada or the UK, or .net wherever. So there's no real priority. Google and other search engines will look at IP address as a geo IP to know where the traffic is truly coming from, unless it's going through a VPN and being spoofed. If I got your question right. Any other questions? Cole, what about going back to that other, oh, you are still looking, yeah, go to your crazydomains.com and let's just see if that's updated. Oh, I see what you're saying, Mark. Good question. Good question. Right. So what is the priority? It's listing it in whatever priority that AWS has at the time. As far as US audience, I don't think it really matters, to be honest. It's just a failover scenario, and everything is cached. All the boundary routers around the world, caching all the name servers. And so there's a pretty low latency when it comes to that. I would just plug them in the order that AWS has shown. You could.
Adam, we're not in luck with the.
Okay, no worries. So who are you using? What's that? What's the Crazy Domains? Crazy Domains is taking its time. So go back in there. It's probably going to say it's processing still. Just click on that, Cole. Crazy Domains.
I'll have to log in again.
Oh, okay, right, gotcha.
There you
go. Yeah, so Mark, does that answer your question? Just plug it in the order that AWS says. You might want to use some kind of pinging tool, and then not ping from your machine, but ping from where your customer's audience is predominantly going to be. Ultimately, I wouldn't worry about it. But it was a great question. I would want, where is it going to look up my DNS records? I want it to find it as quickly as possible.
Interesting, Adam. It seems to be still holding the original Business Catalyst ones here. So
okay. So maybe it wasn't a click or a, why don't you just delete them all and just plug them in? Although it does require, it's suggesting it wants IP addresses.
Well, they do order the others. They generally do add automatically. So I'm not sure.
So let's just delete and update. It's not going to matter. You can always put those back later.
I'll need to go back to see if I can find those name.
Meanwhile, while Colin's doing that, any questions around DNS? I think you all know that propagating and refreshing, waiting for things to happen on the domain registrar can take time, as we're seeing. DNS is a pain in the butt. It used to be convoluted on our side, and that was for the reasons, as I mentioned, load balancers, etc. But Derek has done an incredible job. He spent a lot of time researching, making sure that all the API calls we make for SSL and DNS and then load balancers are all done correctly, automated it for scale, created a microservice so that you're able to do that yourselves and via API. So that's incredible, especially I think for those of you who are doing bulk site registration. There we go, Cole. I think you nailed it now. So deleting the old ones rather than updating them is making the difference. So just update that, see what happens.
Well, I wonder what limits me to 3. Anyway.
I'm sure once that's done, it'll allow you to add later. All right, so it's doing its thing in the background. Mark, great question earlier about the order. I guess if your customers are in US, maybe you do put the US, the .com at the top. I think it's very negligible when it comes to name servers priority though. So you save that, take 2, we'll see what happens. Basically in an hour's time, everything will be running and working. And on the platformOS side, everything is good. Yeah, V6, I would say so, Mark. They did look like IPv6. Everyone's still waiting to upgrade from IPv4. Apparently we were going to run out of IP addresses, but that's when load balancers came in and saved the day. So we take advantage of that ourselves.
So is that IP address coming from platformOS or is it coming from Crazy Domains? Because it looks like it's coming from Crazy Domains.
It's doing a lookup. So Crazy Domains is doing a lookup on that name server and it's propagating it.
One question regarding the records and things like that. Are you guys looking to make it easy to implement, like Google and Office 365
Yes,
into there?
we have.
They've got heaps of records that you got to copy across, and it's a pain in the neck. And you got to try and.
So we've got the concept of templates and being able to click a button and say deploy this template. And in reverse, we're also wanting to have our stuff put on third-party systems like SendGrid and others, so that you can go, oh, I'm on platformOS, click, talks to our API, does the provisioning, sends the records, verifies, of course, that you're allowed to do it. But yeah, it's having templates for record sets. It's really just a text file, right? So you can export a DNS zone file, which contains everything, and it's a standard format. So having a template that has Google MX records or OpenSRS, SPF for SendGrid, all of those things can be or are being templatized.
Yeah, just a way not to have to copy and paste every single record.
Like you've seen now how quickly, like in a click or two, you've now got your domain name and SSL deployed. That whole mechanism has been built as a microservice with all of the things that you mentioned in mind. Derek's got it all ready to roll out as future upgrades and enhancements to this new thing.
Awesome.
More questions, keep them coming. Someone's got a question for Cole around using the API. Cole?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you use the API? Could you tell us what the endpoints are? And yeah, Scott would like to be able to demonstrate that next week at Town Hall.
Done deal. Waiting with bated breath there, Scott.
He knows I'm tricking. All right. Cole, what about now? Have you refreshed just as a final little check-in, see what Crazy Domains is doing now that you deleted the old records out of the new?
Let me get back into it. Okay, refreshing here. Yeah, I can look at the diagnostics again, see what it says.
Try that, but go up to your account.
See, it's still...
Go up to Account Manager and just refresh that page to see if it's taken. Go up, name server. There we go. It has. There we are. So that was the issue the first time around. Probably shouldn't have updated. Should have definitely deleted and added new. And now whatever caching behind the scenes, those name server updates will propagate out through the web, and eventually when platformOS verifies that, it'll know that the domain's ready and going live. Martin, would you like to speak to your process today? I'm just calling you out because you mentioned earlier before we hit record that you've done something and you had a domain go live, although Martin did say he was drinking a Guinness and he might have run to the fridge to replenish, so he may not really be there.
Hello, I'm here. Yeah, we did a couple of go lives today, I think, and yeah, it went really smoothly. The auto apply for the SSL was insanely good. It was so nice, so smooth. So you don't have to wait for it to propagate and then go back and manually authorize it and wait for that to resolve. The whole process is so much smoother. So yeah, it's a massive step forward in the right direction. So I hear the API is almost ready, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Great. Now it looks like just in time. This whole thing would have taken 15 minutes if we had the name servers updated correctly, but now it's live. So Colin's going to do his cut and paste, Daniel.
So we got the MX records we might put in here, for instance, and update.
Boom.
And commit.
It's good you can do a whole bulk amount in once, right?
Yeah, that's really good. In my experience, it helps a lot.
Good.
Anyway, so...
great. So you can go ahead and add those records. It will, again, update DNS and propagate through. But good news. Now let's try and go to that web address, Cole, and see if it comes up, unless, of course, it's cached on your site, www.clevernetsolutions.com.
No, no, it's still cached on the old one.
Okay, so you're still cached. Well, I could probably try on mine and see what it does, just for, because I haven't recently gone there. Sorry to say, Cole, I haven't.
That's good.
clevernetsolutions.com.au.
Clever with an A. Clever.
There you go. I'm on platformOS. Yeah. Welcome to platformOS is what I get. So you've got a DNS cache happening on your side,
Right.
so it's pointing it elsewhere. There's ways to clear that. There's DNS flush. You can do it locally. Then your router on your internet service provider might have it cached as well. So it's always good to, before you hit support what's going on, you get a friend, phone a friend, say, hey, can you go to this website? Just make sure it's working. Yeah, it's working fine. Okay, my cache is still pointing to old places, but generally that's where the time to live runs out. It's forced then to go and look for the new DNS records. It gets them and job done. Good. Well done, Cole. You did it, mate.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know, you padded quite nicely, I will say. I couldn't have said it better than you.
I always
thank you for that.
Never know when to shut up. That's all right. Well, good job. You want to just go over that slide deck really quickly one last time for everybody, just so we can highlight?
What, from the get-go? So yeah. All right. So let's refresh. So basically,
share your screen too.
Go.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Help. So so in summary, you would come to your partner portal, check the domains button. You would go to add new domain. Choose if you are putting the hosted zone on platformOS, you would check that button there. You would add your domain in terms of the root domain, and that starts the process. And ultimately, at some point in time after you've refreshed, it will bring you to this point where it will offer you the name service that you need to use at your registrar level to then enter at the registrar and point back. And of course, that was the step that we got a little bit stuck on. And refresh that until you get to a point where you can then add your DNS records and do that job, which might take a few minutes for each one of them, depending.
And to call out Daniel's suggestion on, could I have a template which just automatically inserts a Google records or whatever? Yes.
And then, your SSL is put in place and applied, and you're set to go.
I like that domain name, platformos.rocks. I think that's a JJ.
Yeah, that was the one you did initially, yes. So.
Nice. Very good. Well, thank you, Colin Frost. Excellent work. By the way, those who are still wondering, all of it is available over APIs as well. And I know for partners like SiteGlide, they're like, oh, good, because we can just do this programmatically, and the support and time effort involved will be drastically reduced. You can see everybody, including us, sighing with relief. And as I said, using services like Let's Encrypt and having a more low-end hosting provision is not the way we went. We've gone with something more upscale, and that's why there's a little bit more mechanics going on in the background. Documentation links will be available, and we will post those up in the comments of this video that will be on YouTube shortly. If you're not already reading them, like, subscribe, links at the bottom. And
I've just put those links in the chat anyway, but they will be in the YouTube video as well.
Lovely. Thanks, Alexandra, for your comment. She said, this is terrific. Thanks. Martin's saying, it's a cool update. Adam said, you rock, Colin Frost. Well done. Legend.
Thanks, guys.
You're now a developer.
I'm feeling more technical already.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions, yeah, Colin will be presenting every week.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Frost. And we will see you at the next town hall where somebody is presenting something. All right. See you, everybody.
I think that was Ursh in the background.
Ursh?
No, maybe not.